and it's amazing to have so many slowly joining in today, so that we can dig a little bit deeper. The idea behind the Power Hour sessions was originally born out of a strange enjoyment for risk combined with determination to showcase how good Power Apps are. We are today remaining within the Canvas and SharePoint boundary, but we're also looking, in fact, Alex mentioned a few minutes ago, to run one of these doing a model-driven session too. So it's on the cards, and if that's of interest, then just keep an eye on our LinkedIn for that announcement. To set the scene for today, though, and to deliberately, again, not spend too long on this part, for the pure fact that we've only got an hour to build an even more complicated app. We're here today because of the continued questions that we get from our clients in reference to what's next, combined with the first session where we explored the basic setup of an app. And today what we're going to do is focus on a couple of the more complex aspects to really hit home some actual business scenarios that you could easily fix by using a Power Platform in general. We did this time place out a poll for the type of app that you'd want, and the outcome was a project management app. The reason for doing it slightly differently to the first event where we did everything live was simply so that I can get the databases out of the way as they take time. And today we're going to be starting with a small head start, but I'll walk you through it anyway. On that, some quick introductions from the team before we kick off. My name is Tom Moore, one of the co-founders and CEO of Power 365 Solutions, which is an organization set up to deliberately take advantage of Microsoft's Power Platform and business process automation in general, to be honest. We've got a fantastic handpicked team that is ever growing, and our primary focus is really turning our clients' business problems into some form of automated solution and essentially kind of trying to capitalize on the license costs that you're all paying for Microsoft 365. My background is technically modern workplace, but my passion has really always been finding and somehow fixing problems. And Canvas apps or Power Apps in general give me the perfect playground to do that, although long live InfoPath. I'll hand over to Alex and then Molly quickly for some introductions, and then we'll come back to the scenario for today. So Alex.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. Welcome back to all those that joined last time. It's going to be interesting to see what we can do with some more advanced topics today. As Tom mentioned, we're at Power 365. I am the Power Platform Practice Lead at Power 365. I'm also going to be monitoring the chat today. I'm also looking out for some ideas for future sessions. So please, if you have those ideas, then feed them into the chat channel. I'll also be stopping Tom at the relevant points to answer your questions or answering them directly in the chat. So please feel free if you've got anything on your mind. Molly, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name's Molly. I'm the marketing manager here at Power 365 Solutions. I'm the one that's probably been bombarding you on LinkedIn with emails and messages and things like that. So, you know, we really appreciate you guys coming back, or anyone that's new here. I'm going to leave the technical side to Tom and Alex, but if there's any non-technical questions, then I'm more than happy to answer those, and you will hear from me after for any feedback and yeah, any future comms. But get started. Take it away, Tom.
Thank you. Right, so last time I needed maybe like an extra 5 minutes to finish it off visually. So like I said, today we've got a small bit of a head start, not too much of a head start. I will walk you through what I've done so you don't think I'm cheating anywhere. I wouldn't want anyone to think that there's a fugazi going on. Project management. Now, I placed down some of the thoughts that I thought would be useful for project management. We have had people approach us previously with an Excel spreadsheet in a project management aspect. So I've taken a few of those ideas. It's not something that I haven't seen before. And actually, it does really suit a model-driven app. The reason I'm sticking within SharePoint, as with my background being modern workplace, it's always my job to essentially try and keep licensing as minimal as possible. So I am technically undoing an area that Alex would definitely be able to improve on. So what I'm going to do, and this is where your ideas will be really, really useful, but the first things I thought would be really useful for a project management app is to be able to display all the projects, to maybe have a filter on there to display projects that you are assigned to as a project manager, potentially create new, amend projects, maybe even add some notes so that you've got like a relational aspect to that. And then we're going to go into some complex Power Automate pieces, hopefully today, where we're going to create a SharePoint folder area off the back of a button click, feed that back in so that you can access it through the app. And maybe if we've still got time, then at the end, go into exporting a CSV and getting that file to email to myself. using SharePoint. So where we've got started so far, and the only things that I've done, just so that everybody's we're all on the same page, is I've created a couple of databases. We did cover this in the first session, and I think that session is available somewhere. So if you do want to go back and have a look at this, but this stuff is just basic SharePoint, where we've got a couple of lists. We've got a project management master, where I've placed in some columns, essentially trying to replicate an Excel database. We've then got a client. So I don't know whether I'm going to use the clients aspect of this, but this will just allow you to, if you think of some form of CRM, allows you to load the clients in. We're going to have a notes area where we put these relational pieces, and I've placed some data in just so that it makes it easier for us to work with moving forward. And then we've got a documents area where I've placed a template folder structure. Just for anyone that is interested in SharePoint, this is brand new. It's a little folder switcher, it's for earlier. In fact, I think it was noted by Stephen Port recently too. And in this template folder area, what we're going to do is we've set up what you would normally have maybe in a file server or whatever you're using, but essentially it's just going to be a template area in which we've got some proposals that we can place in. I've placed a file in there. Maybe you've got template files that you want to copy in the future, and it just goes through and it just becomes an area that we can, or it becomes that base for us to create documents from. Moving over to the app, reference what we've done to start off. Not much. And the first session we went through, I kind of went through the way in which I would set this up, reference, having text relate to text so that it's easier to change colors and branding and all that kind of good stuff, and how we'd add databases. And all I've done today is I've added in exactly the same stuff as we did in the first session. Now that includes an admin area, which I've got my labels and my text boxes all set up how I want them to be set up. It then includes an items area, which again, if we loop back to the first session, all of these pieces, so all of the font will then relate to the item in the back. Yep.
I'm just going to interject there. We've got some people reporting that they can't see the screen. If you could just
see the screen.
I can see it. I think some people can and some people can't. So just try and reshare, see if that works.
You definitely need to be able to see the screen. For all those that can't, you've just missed me completely explaining the databases. We good? I'll carry on and presume we are. Perfect.
Yeah, they can see now. Perfect.
Just to reloop those databases, there's nothing special. You haven't missed anything overly interesting, but what we have got is we've got SharePoint lists and a template area. I'll just reshow the template area in which you can see some files. Didn't mean to open that one. And a folder structure behind it. Moving into the app then, sorry, just so that anyone that couldn't see the screen there, we covered it in the first session, but in the back, I've got a couple of screens that I've loaded in already. We've got the admin area where I've got some text labels and some buttons and some icons where I set the colors that I like and then base another screen with exactly the same functions, and I relate that to the admin screen. So this one here, for example, the font is related to the admin area of the font. And the reason that we do that, for anyone that didn't see it in the first session, is because very, very commonly we find with a Canvas app, the client wants to rebrand something, and they might come to me and they say, Tom, I don't like Sego UI, can you change that? And I can then go through and I can put it to Courier New in the back, and it will change everywhere around my app. So that's the reason for that one. It's going to change that back to Sego UI, otherwise my OCD will have a fit for the rest of the session. Outside of that, the only other things I've loaded in here is I don't particularly like the inputs, so the text inputs and all of those drop-down inputs, I don't particularly like them, so I have created them separately, and then I reutilize those all the time. You can pretty much pull these from one of Microsoft templates, and that's all I've really done here. And again, I've got a different button because I don't like the blue buttons that they throw in as a default template. So again, it's just basic input things that I'm going to copy around. And then the front screen, the only thing we've added to the front screen is a background. They're not overly impressive Canvas apps visually at the moment. So what I have done is I've just created a Photoshop JPEG image that I just load in, and a HTML piece at the top, which I've just got some gradient HTML text in that again relates to some colors that I'm setting in the app on start. Now I'm firing through that deliberately because today is designed to be slightly more complex. And the reason that I'm not covering these areas in detail is because they were in the first session. So that's the reason for that. My app on start just loaded in some colors for primary, secondary, and some of the HTML pieces. And then I'm placing in my typical SharePoint columns and loading in my user profile. And then I just like to set my images as variables. So if I ever need to call them, they're there. And that's our template. So we've got nothing further than that. Now, looping back then and moving straight into it, because I really want to get to the Power Automate today. The first thing with the project management, and again, like I said at the start, if you've got ideas, reference what you'd like to see, throw them in towards Alex, because I'm more than happy to change the shape of this. But the first thing that I thought we would need to do if we consider a project management app is we need to be able to see all the projects that we've currently got loaded. And I imagine the most common use case for project management is you are probably still using Microsoft Excel, and you just have a list of those projects with a status and maybe some notes on the side. So the first thing first really is to recreate that. Now, nice and easy to do within a Canvas app. I've already created, like you saw at the start, those databases, and I've already loaded them in. So we've got them loaded here. I don't know if you can hear that alarm in the background. Can you hear that alarm in the background? No? Cool. The squelch is working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load them through in a gallery. Nice and simple. Now, I could put them in a data table. The only issue with a data table is it's not overly flexible reference editing inline, and there's a potential that I maybe do want to edit inline. So I'm just going to take it as a given that I potentially want this as a gallery. And what I'm going to do there is I'm going to take text boxes to start. Rag status on the project, I like that one. All for that, based on status. Sounds good to me. I'm going to put a text box in there, and we're going to leave that there for now, just so I've got something in. Right. And the items. So the items of this are going to become my project management master. Now I'm going to leave that as is for now. However, one of the requirements that I put in there is I think you should be able to filter them. So I'm going to come back to the items in a second. What I'm also going to do is the reason I'm putting them in text boxes is because of the potential to edit inline. Whether I do or do not during this, I'm not 100% sure. We may want to change that towards the end. And to set based on an edit inline, it's always handy to have something to select whether you want to edit it inline or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to preempt the potential. I'm going to put an icon in there. I'm going to drop an icon in from my items page. Now that icon, we'll play with the visuals in a little bit. I'm just going to make it an edit pen. And what I'm going to do with this is I am going to update, and I'm going to set a variable based on the click of this icon. And with that variable, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say con edit, and I'm going to put it to true. Now, when you want to edit in line, what I'll also do is I'll deliberately make an error so that you can see why it would be that way. I'm going to put it to this item. The reason normally I'd stick that in the same context set. The reason that you need two is because I'm going to say that I want to edit. And the reason I'm going to say that I want to edit is because all of the items in here reference a display mode. So with a display mode, it allows us to change. At the moment, it's in edit, so I can type in it. And what I want to be able to do is I want to then also say that if con edit equals true, then I'd want it to be display mode edit. Otherwise, I'd want it to be display mode.view. Now that's all good and well, but there's a potential that I'm going to have 10, 20 different projects in there. And if I press edit, they're all going to go to edit mode. So the reason that I've got two statements when I click this button to say that it's going to be this item is because I also then need to say and on edit item.id was this item.id potentially. So that's what my piece is. What that allows it to do then is it becomes unique. So when I press that edit pen, it uniquely knows that it's that particular line I'm trying to edit. And then when and it leaves the rest in the right mode. However, moving that forward again, delete these out, put them on. Realistically, what we probably also want is we also want it to, when we then press the edit pen again, to either save it, patch it, or put it back to its view mode. So what I'm going to say here is I'm going to say if con edit equals true, then I'm going to update the context, and I'm going to put con edit to false, and I'm going to put con edit item to blank. I don't know if that is that delaying when I type that. Anyone else? Can you see that delay? No. And the reason I'm doing that is essentially, if it's loaded me through, if I missed something, got an error on it for some reason, or is it just catching up? No, there it goes. And the reason for that is because, like I said, if I don't want to use two icons. I want to do one icon, click the edit, it's going to edit the line. And then if it doesn't edit the line, I want to save it and it can go back to save, which means I'm also going to change the icon and I'm going to say exactly the same. So in fact, I'm going to take it from here. Work smart, not hard, they say. Paste that in there. And I'm going to say, if that is, I'm going to do an icon.save. Otherwise, it's going to be an icon.edit. Hopefully save is the right icon. It's really slow. I don't know. It's slow on your side there, Alex. It's taken ages to put my formula in. Now, when I press this edit pen, my box comes in and I get a save icon. And then when I press my save icon, it disappears. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it on edit for now, and I'm going to carry this through. And instead, what I'm going to put in my default here. So this might well want to be the, I don't know, it's going to be this item dot title potentially because it's the project name. Let's just set these a little bit smaller over here. Happy with that. And then I'm going to copy and paste. Maybe I then want the project code, master code in there. And the reason I know that exists is because obviously the database is already created. I'm going to make that a bit smaller because it doesn't need to be that big. Copy and paste that. We'll titivate afterwards. What else have I got in my database? Master. So client, that's definitely useful. It's my client. I'll leave that as that is. Copy and paste. And let's also do the status for now. I call it master. Status, I think. Call it status. Master status. Let's refresh. Value. There we are. Cool. And then if I wanted to save them, they go back to read only, and I'd put some title, but we'll come back to the visualizations afterwards. Let's just drop that there. Right. First thing we want to do then, add new. So let's get the add news in there so we can get some more data. I'm going to take a button. Here's my submit button. I'm going to place that over here, and we'll put it up here, and I'll just do new. Now, right. Let's rename some best practices I should do. Haven't done any of those text boxes, so I'll just minimize that so nobody can notice. Right, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to insert a rectangle. I don't like, if anyone remembers from the first session, anyone that's come back, I don't like using the forms that Microsoft offer you. And I know it's the faster way to do things, but in all honesty, I don't like using them. So I'm going to place up a rectangle. I'm going to copy and paste it, and I'm going to create another one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it on the right-hand side over here, and I'm going to make it white. What I'm doing by doing that, and if I group them together, we covered containers in the first one, add to container. What I'm doing by doing that is I'm creating myself a pop-out, which I can then do off the button press using local variables. I can do const add new to true, and I can take the entire pop-up and I can say that you'll only be visible when const add new has been clicked. Slowly but surely. Now, what that allows me to do is when I click add new, I get my pop-up. Perfect. And then potentially I want an icon. Not huge. I've got loads of icons. I've got loads of images loaded in here. I should just use them. In fact, I won't use them. I like this one. In fact, what I will do, I will use it. Why not? What have I saved as? Close. Icon close, icon close, icon cancel, icon delete. Fabulous. Icon cancel to icon delete. I'm going to place in an image. The reason for that is because it looks nicer. And whilst we're doing complex, we might as well. So my var icon, var image cancel should be an X. I can make it a bit smaller. Now with these ones, for anyone that uses their own custom images, it's always handy when I do a play mode and you use an image, you don't get a cursor change. So what I like to do with those is I like to add an icon over the top. Just put an icon in, doesn't matter what icon it is. I like to put an icon over the top, roughly make it the same size, and then make it fully transparent. So I take the transparency from anywhere, take it transparent, transparency being the 0 at the end, so 0 colors and then 0 transparency. Take all of these, make them transparent. Don't need any of those, making the focus border 0. What that allows now is it looks like the image, but it gives me an icon change. So I can now do icon close and I put my code there. And I'll group these together. Click that icon close. And on my icon close, I can now do an update context, con add new to false, which allows me to close my pop-up. Did I call it add new? On. Yeah, add new. It's just it delaying again. Fabulous. There we go. So I can now add new and I can close my pop-up. So we're semi there. Right. Now I'm going to take some items. I know I need that. I know I need that. I know I need that. And I know I need that. And I'm going to place them inside my container. And I'm going to bring them over here because we're adding a new one. So what we're going to need here is we're going to need the title of it. So I'll take a label. Don't have any labels there. Let's take a label from here, in here, and stick that in. And again, the reason that we're making this as a Power App, most of you will go, you know, some of you, I say most, some of you might be looking at this and just saying, well, I could create this as an Excel spreadsheet. So why would I do this as a Power App? And you're not wrong. You could absolutely create this as an Excel spreadsheet. You could put some columns and you could run it that way. The reason that we would maybe go down the Power App road when we get into the Power Automate shortly is because there's so much that we can do after it. Reference, if there has been a note added, then we can update the project manager, or if there has been, if a client asks for an export of all of their projects that we've got going on, or a total of the costs that we've got that month, or whatever it is, Power Apps allows us to do that. And again, some of you would argue that we could do it in Excel. It's the same kind of formula. But the use of macros in Excel is really, really difficult, especially if you're not syncing them down through the file explorer. And actually a Power Apps becomes a little bit more useful. Allows us to import it into Teams, allows us to have it on our phone, all those good things. So I'm going to put the title here, project title there. Again, we'll titivate afterwards. Now the project code is a little bit more difficult. I just realized that I don't really want anybody changing that because it's an auto number. And I've definitely, that's going to be an area of struggle that we're going to have to come back to in a second because it needs to be auto generated. And that sounds simple, but I've built it in a way that it's not going to be. That would be really simple in a model driven app, Alex, with an auto number. Not so simple in SharePoint. So we've got that. Then I'm going to have client. So let's just do here. We'll do client. In the future, I'd probably look to make that a database. What else have we got? Due date. What's Marco asked me to explain there?
He's talking about the passing off of data to F&O. I'll drop a note in about that, so don't worry about that one.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I know you did say you're all over it, and I'm questioning you. Lost myself there. Due date and assigned to. Assigned to is also going to give me a bit of grief because that is a SharePoint column. That one will be fun. And the cost. This is the bit that is the boring bit. Cost. We don't need that anymore. And this is going to become status. Again, we'll get to that at the end if we've got time. Now, I know that the data items for this one will become hopefully choices, master, no, wrong, object, master dots, master underscore status. Hopefully that works. Come back to it once it's loaded. So we're going to have title, client, project title. That's going to be assigned to the project manager. That one's going to give me some grief because that is technically a SharePoint user column, which means I'm going to have to do a gallery. But I messed up with that one. It's going to take 2 minutes. Let's add that in. Let's put that there. Let's put a label in here. Perfect. Let's just give that a background color so I can see it. This is going to have to be a Office 365 users dot search, I believe, v2, where the search term is, God knows, text 10, text underscore 10 text hopefully, and then I think I have to wrap that in a value. I'm also going to need to do an if is blank on text underscore 10 text. I should rename these. If that's not blank, then do it. Otherwise, don't do anything. And put the label to be display name. Label name, and then potentially also in here, gal users need an icon with transparency. The internet is delaying me, give me errors that don't need to be there. I am fortunately or unfortunately in the Middle East at the moment, which means I'm semi-hotspotting myself. Fab. So we've got something that also needs a visible based on this. So we'll get rid of that, do a visible. If that's not blank, then you'll show, otherwise you won't. Cool. When I then select that, the reason I've had to do that for anyone that's just wondering why I'm making that more complicated is because I need to update context, the con submit user. The reason for it is when you submit into a user column on SharePoint, for anyone remembers from the first session, and if you've never experienced it before, it's a complex column, which means that you've got to place in some OData, which is this. And I usually load it on my OnStart for me as a person when I want to submit myself in. If I'm going to place somebody else into it, then I need to take the of this item dot email or dot mail. It's going to be mail, isn't it? Yeah. The display name is the same. The email is the same. And what that allows is it takes it from, for some reason they don't talk to each other. It would be amazing if the Office 365 connector just allowed us to submit into SharePoint. It doesn't, even though they run off the same Azure at the top, Active Directory at the top. But it allows me to take the Office 365 search, so anybody that's in my tenant, it allows me to place it into a SharePoint column, and then I can submit it forward. However, I just need to finish that, get rid of that. I don't need that in there. I will do it as a set rather than update, so I can refresh it afterwards, and that should disappear in a second once it loads itself through. Perfect. So how that looks in, just for anyone that's wondering what I've done there, this would allow me, hopefully, if I do Alex, I get my Alex Jones, and then I could select Alex Jones. I need to make that so that it then hides the, what do I want it to hide? I then want it to hide, hide gallery, con hide gallery for now, let's put it to true. Actually, no, let's not do that. It's not the best way to do it. Let's do a visible if. We'll come back to this. I'm just going to, for now, I'm going to fudge it. True. Come back to that one. And we'll make the visible. We'll come back to that. So I've now got the ability to do title, client, due date, assigned to, cost and status. I just need a quick save button in there. Just take this one, add new, just stick a save in there somewhere for now. We'll come back to it, make it look nice after. There you go, save. Now again, in my first session, I kind of mentioned I don't like the forms. So instead, what I have to do here, I prefer a patch statement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to patch into my project management master. How am I doing for time? Half an hour burns, got half an hour left. Right, yeah. Project management master. I'm going to write defaults, just OCD. I'm going to say I'm going to create new. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to patch in my pieces. So this is where I should rename all of these really. Let's do that first. Right, so this can become text title. I'm going to do underscore title. I'm going to do underscore code. do underscore client underscore due date underscore assigned underscore cost, and the drop down is underscore status, which is that working? My internet again. Right, now in here I'm going to go underscore title.text, then I'm going to put in the project code. It's not that, it's master code. And that's going to become code.text. I think it's an auto number, and maybe isn't. And then I'm going to do client, master client, which is going to become client.text. And I'm going to do date, due date, which is going to become underscore due date. Whoa. Due date dot selected date, and then I'm going to do it signed to, which is then going to become var submit user, because we had to do that code. And then I'm going to do cost, which is underscore cost.text. That's not .text, it needs to be a value, to be honest. I'm sure that's currency, so we'll do a value of that. And then we're going to go the status is underscore status dot selected dot value. I don't think I need that in there. I'm going to find out. Yeah. Fab. So we're patching in everything that we need to do. What I'll then do is I'll then do an update context, and I'll reset items to reset items. I'll do that twice. Just copy and paste it, but it's quicker to type. To not reset items. And then that reset items variable will allow me to take this. If anyone's got any questions or wants me to explain anything, obviously just throw it towards Alex and I'll do that. I'm going to select all of these because I can do them as a one. And I'm going to select them all. I'm going to put reset items in as a variable. And then what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to refresh my project management database. And then I'm going to update context to con add new to false. And I'm going to close that pop-up. And hopefully, will it work first time? Bets on working first time, new project. I've not done code yet. We'll come back to code. Client can TOSO 2 for now. Due date can be, I don't know then. And it can be assigned to Alex. That's because I've not set it back to, I don't want to reset that yet. What I do want to do in here is I want to con hide gallery to false, I think. It's better. And I'm going to set it to Alex Jones for now. That will change. We'll fix that in a second. Cost can be whatever that needs to be. And I'm going to open. When I click save, hopefully that disappears and goes in. Fabulous. So we've now got two things. And if I save that and I want to edit either, this is the unique piece that I said about earlier, where we do this item equals ID, which allows me to edit individual lines. So we've got the ability to add new, and I'll come back and I'll make that look a little bit prettier once we've done the Power Automate, because I really want to get that in today. The other thing that I like to do with pop-ups is when we're on a phone, what we used to reference kind of native functionality is we are used to just clicking somewhere else on the screen and it closes a pop-up. So what I like to do with pop-ups is the back rectangle that we've got here is I like to place in the same code on that background rectangle. That's out. And I'll make these look a bit different. I will also put a reset in there, but that also just allows the user to click anywhere and it'll close the pop-up for them too. So that's just something we can also do. Right, so we've got an add new. I'll come back to making it look a bit prettier towards the end because I want to get something else in. We've technically got display all projects. Let's just do a display all projects filter. So in here, what I might want to do then is I might want to see, I don't know, maybe we've got all projects. In fact, I don't like that. What I like doing for this is I like doing a label. I'll take a label here. I'll add that in. And this might be all projects. No, let's make it I'll tell you what we'll do. My projects for now. Put an icon over the top where we will go transparent again. Cool. Mess with that in a second. Let's get that transparent. And what we'll do with this one is we'll set the update context to con filter true. Now you could do loads of things with this. What we did recently with a client is we actually set the filter based on the text of whatever the label was, which is also possible. We're only going to filter for my projects here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply say if con filter equals true, then we're going to say my projects. Otherwise, we're going to say all projects. See what that does. And by doing that, we can then in here, we can say if con filter equals true, then we're going to filter project management master where assigned to, come on, slowly but surely. Is my internet holding? Can you hear me okay? We'll do it .email equals var current user .mail, because that's what I set in my onStart. Otherwise, we'll do project management master as a full. Now that should, if I've got one assigned to me in the database, so if I now select that to my projects, it gives me mine. If I select it back, what we want to then do is we want to make it the other way around to say if con filter equals true, then we're going to update the context of con filter, square bracket, con filter false, otherwise we'll make it true, leave it as that, so that I can then flick it back if it wants to load. Come on. Essence of time here. There we go. So I can now flick it between the two. So there's the all and there's the my. And those filters will expand. We had a requirement recently for it to be filtered by 4 different things, which in a truth table is 4 times 4. So there's 16 lines of filter code. If I've got a chance, I'll show you what it looks like because I've saved it as a copy and paste. But it's 4 times 4 lines of filter code. So, you know, there's loads that you can do with it. I'm just going to put my laptop on charge to make sure that I don't end up dying here. Right, so we've got in here then, we've done the display all, we've done the projects, we've done the create, we've technically done an amend. I'm going to come back to them. We'll come back to notes because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go straight into the SharePoint folder one because I want to get some Power Automate in. Now, with the amend, what I want to do with the amend is I want it to go into a pop-up and display all the details. And I can absolutely reutilize this com pop-up. I don't want to paste it there. That's exactly the wrong thing that I wanted to do. Bit of that. Control C. Click somewhere else, Control V, where if I was to now have the view of this and I make that a visible based on con view item, when I'm in the edit mode, what I could potentially do, and this is just me playing around, is I could potentially take another icon. You know, there's loads of different ways to skin a cat here, but for purpose of demonstration, if I wanted to make that maybe something that looks like I'm going to view more, maybe something, let's go with that one. And in here, I could do an update context with a con view item, square bracket, true. And when it plays ball, come on. That would give me the pop-up. And in here, I could then say, I would also need to change that to view item and that to view item so that it closes it. And I'm going to need to also in here put the on item select. I like to put them into a variable. I could absolutely reference the gallery selected. I'm going to put it into a variable because it's just easier for me to play with. And then in here, what I've got the ability to do is default. And I could say con item selected dot title. Take all of that. The project code will be the same, except for its code. client will be the same except for next client. Am I doing 20 minutes? Yeah. That will then become due date. Assign to become assign to dot display name. Let's get rid of that gallery. Don't need it in there. Back to it. Cost and items, but the default will be status dot value. Perfect. So that allows me to see it wider. What I could also do here is I could say that only show me this when con edit, I think is true. Take it from the icon, can't remember. Yeah, that's what I want. True, otherwise false. So that it doesn't show all the time. What it does allow me to do is when I'm editing, I can then expand it a bit further, and here it is. Now, what I want to do here, minus the fact that this looks terrible, what I want to do is I want to be able to, when we think about project management, we create a new project. And in fact, I could probably do it off the back of a create new. Now that, if I was to do it off the back of a create new, let's bring that to the front, some ordering issues here. If I was to do it off the back of the create new, which I absolutely could, sometimes maybe you don't need a folder. So the argument is there. What do you reckon, Alex? Do you reckon create the folder off the back of a create new? Or do you reckon create the folder based on a specific button press to create folder? A little bit like Dynamics, where it doesn't create it until you ask it to create it. What do you reckon?
Yeah, the latter, I think.
The latter, so create it when you want to create it rather than create it automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, so when I expand this then, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have a button to add folder. I'm going to have to ignore the fact that it looks terrible at the moment. Just leave it like that. So I'm going to add folder. I'll just leave it somewhere. We'll play with the visuals after. Now, what I want is I want this to only be visible when I have in my database here, I've got a doc URL column, and I want it to only be visible when this is blank. So in that then, what I'm going to say is if is blank doc what my icon selected on item selected doc URL. If that's blank, then show, otherwise don't. And I'll explain the reasoning for that in a second. So that is blank. No, I need it to be is blank, is not blank. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run Power Automate. Now, I could absolutely go for and create it through this new little window that we've got to create. I'm not going to pop the thing out because I've not used it yet and I don't want it to mess up. So instead, I'm going to go straight over to my sandbox. I'm going to go into flows and I'm going to create a new flow. And I'm going to run it on an instant flow and I'm going to run it on Power Apps v2. We probably should be using v2. And from that, what I'm going to do is I want it to essentially take the, what do I want it to take? I want it to take the, project code, I think. Yeah, let's just do project code. Let's just do project code and we'll have an input in there. Oh, I've lost your faces. So I have project code. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if we think about it, I then need to state the location that I want it to be created from. So in here, I'm going to take, I don't want to set. For anyone that hasn't used Power Automate before, office.com into Power Automate, this is kind of where all the power comes from, really, hence the name Power Automate, but it becomes the legwork behind everything. The Power App being the front end, Power Automate being the mailman in the back. I need to initialize a variable. And I'm going to say this is going to be the site URL or library URL. Let's just do library URL. And I'll make that string. And I'll rename that to be var library URL. And in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in. The reason I'm doing this, there's loads of different ways. This could be an environment variable. It could be anything. But just for the purpose of this, I'm going to take that, the URL of the document library, and I'm going to place it in here. Again, not hugely necessary, but a way in which I like working, I suppose. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to copy the folder I might not use that variable thinking about it. I'm going to copy a folder. I'm going to copy from, now this is where I would then use my library URL, but thinking about it, I might just put sandbox in. I'm going to take my, in fact, I do want that because I'm going to pass it back. I think the folder to copy is going to be template because it's what we've selected. So in my project management documents, I'm going to select template. The destination site address is going to be into sandbox again. And the destination folder is also going to be project management documents. And if it already exists, then it's going to copy it with a new name. Great, nice and easy. There's not really any complexity there. However, I don't want it to be named template, in all honesty. I want it to be named project code. I think that's going to be a little bit more useful. So what I'm going to do here, it's not so easy to rename things in SharePoint, especially using Power Automate. What you think you're renaming doesn't really rename using Power Automate. You have to use one of the back-end columns called file leaf ref, I believe. I say I believe, like I've not. That was a false use of I believe. I know it's called file leaf ref. Apologies, there's no need for that. Right, sandbox, we'll sandbox that in. It's going to be a post. So the reason that I know that is, but I'm going to go over here. I've got code somewhere else, but I'm going to just show you how I would normally find that. So send HTTPS request, rename folder, SharePoint, Power Automate, keyword bingo into Google. You can see I've already clicked one of these before. What have we got here? Renaming a SharePoint folder. Rename. That's so exactly this. This is evidently being it purple. We've used it before. And do you know what? I know I've got it somewhere. I've got it here too. Rings a bell. You can tell how many times I've needed to use it. Right, now this code here, where it's got the site address, it's got a post because we're using the HTTP request, we're posting it in. This code I can't copy from here, so I know that this exists somewhere else. But if I was looking for this and you've never done this before and you haven't taken this code from somewhere else, a few keyword bingo pieces on Google, and this is what you come to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight over to my OneNote because I know it exists in here somewhere. I think it's in SharePoint. Rename folder. Perfect. Just to save me typing it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first bit of code. I'm going to stick it in here. I'm going to paste that in, and I know that that library name is going to become project management score. If I hyphened it. Terrible practice from me there. I think it needs to be the true name anyway. So I'll take it from the URL. I'll stick that in there, name, list all item fields, swap that to JavaScript. Whether this is not JavaScript, JSON, whether this is going to work first time or not is going to be interesting. Stick that in there. Again, this just relates to what we've got here. I've just typed it out previously, so I don't need to write it. And I'll take these title and file leaf, and I'll stick them in. They don't need to be there. And I'll stick them in here. And what I'm going to name it in between these little indicators here is I'm going to name it code. Should be here. And I'm going to rename it code. Should be in there. So what that then is going to do is it's going to go off and it's going to create that SharePoint request. It's copying the folder, it's placing it in, it's renaming it for me. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to, what I probably want to grab from here as well as I probably want to grab the ID. SPO ID. We're nearly done, which is good because it lines up with time. And I'm going to update the item. I'm going to update sandbox. I'm going to update project management. How are we doing? We've got 10 minutes. The ID is going to be, that needs to be a number. Delete that. Add input. Number. The ID. SPO ID. SPO ID. C is title because I've completely messed up my database somehow, which is annoying actually because that's going to mess up. Let's just. It's not what I want. Should have turned it off rather than fix it, fudge it. This name, project management, master, the ID. It's going to be the ID. I'm just going to put title back in. The reason I've done that is because I didn't turn title off. I know it's called C, it's because I broke it. And I'm going to put in the doc URL, which is now going to become my library URL, your library URL. And I think I put a slash in there, and it's going to become code at the end, project code. So essentially building URL, passing it back into the item so that when I then go back in towards, I'm going to pass, no, I'm not going to respond to the Power App, and I'm going to give it the folder URL, and I'm going to give it exactly the same thing where I do library URL and I do project code. Cool, right, save. Let's rename it Power Hour create folder. Save. Sweet. So some Power Automate, a little bit complexity in the HTTP. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that straight in. I'm going to action Power Automate that. Hopefully it comes through. Doesn't leave me standing. Power Hour create folder. Perfect. That's adding in. What it wants here is it wants the project code. You can see up in the top, it's asking for the project code. So this is con selected. No, it's not con item selected dot code. And it wants the SharePoint ID, which is con item selected dot ID. With that, what else do I want it to do? Nothing. I'm going to put that actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into a variable because I'm responding to the Power App. So when you respond to a Power App, you need to be able to pull the response out. So I'm going to update that context of the con folder create, just, you know, is what it is. Put the run flow in there and then end that out with a variable, which now allows me to do some other stuff. So what that's going to allow me to do is, if this now, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add another icon just for the sake of it, which I would then hide. Let's go with the open icon. Oh, that'll do, like that, little folder. Should have taken it from my items, terrible. And I'm going to only show this visible when if con, what did I call it? Con create folder, con folder create. Yeah, and wrap that is not blank. True, false. Right, we're nearly done. And then what's going to happen here is when it's then selected, so the on select of that is it's then going to launch the con folder create. Whoa. And that should then hopefully take me to my SharePoint folder. Dot folder URL. Right, let's give it a go. So I'm in here. I've got my projects. Here are my all my projects, save. And here it is. So I'm going to go into my CRM deployment. I'm going to go in here. Now, what I could also do is I could place in on this. I could say only show me when the folder doesn't already create as a visible, but maybe we'll get to that. We've got 6 minutes, but I want to see if it runs first. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a test. I'm going to put it to manual and I'm going to leave it there, which means that it's waiting for me to kick it off. No, I'm not. That's absolutely, that's a complete lie. I'm going to go back and I'm going to let it do its thing instead, rather than put the details in. So it's not run yet. I'm going to go into my app and I'm going to click add folder. Hopefully that kicks this off and I don't get failed. So we're in, it's running. My heart is going now because if it fails first time, I'm going to look really stupid and I don't have time to fix it. That's now responded, which is good. Something is in there and it's come back and it's created something. So the only full test now, I suppose, is clicking this and see if it opens SharePoint. Takes me to 001. And here is my folders of my items in. Smashed it. Look at that first go. That's, in all honesty, that's never happened to me before, where it works first time in a Power Automate. So you've got it on camera. I might clip that and add it to my Twitter or something. But what that allows me to do now is it also allows me to, within the database, once I've done some refreshes and things, it allows me to now see that this doc URL has been placed in, so that if I ever wanted to have, for example, against this, maybe I want a folder in here that launches directly and I have that visible all the time. Maybe this is just a true visible. And what it does is all this does, it just does an action launch. And it can be this item doc URL, which means that now this project management app that I've got allows me to create backend folders. And what it allows me to also do is, if I'd make it show that if it's not visible, if it actually has one, I probably want that to be, I might as well. If this is blank, this item doc URL, if it's blank, then hide, otherwise show. And it allows me to now, so play with me. That's because I've not refreshed. And I've not closed it. Does it work? Does it? I haven't done a refresh, so I'm going to force one in, refresh that. Perfect. And I can now launch into those documents. Now you can launch that on your phone, you can launch that on your tablet. I'm now into my documents. I've got my templated area. I can start to do whatever I need to do. And again, every time you want to build these out, you can build those folders. So that actually works pretty well, to be completely honest. A save, I've not done a patch on that, so the edit aspect of that is pretty pointless, but I've now got the ability to add new. I can save it in, and I can do a full folder create. You can see now I can launch my folder, which is handy, and I can launch my folder from here. So that's that one also done. What's that in events? I haven't done notes. I don't really have time to do notes. Does anyone, how are we looking with any of the comments? Does anyone have any questions on that? Because there's probably not much time for me to do much left now.
No questions so far.
No questions. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to push it from that. What I will do after this is I will put the add notes in. We didn't last time send a template out. But what I'll make sure we do this time is I get that template out. And I suppose, do I class that as a loss, the fact that I've not got notes in there yet? Maybe. The export CSV we probably could have done. It's not too difficult to do that. Probably take me about 5 minutes to get that one in. But I'm not going to push my luck. So I'm going to stop it there. I did do notes on the first call, Stu. You are right. You are absolutely right. So that is something that we could refer to, reference some relational notes. Do we have any questions before we cancel that out? No, I'll take no questions as a good thing, to be completely honest. Silence is golden. Thank you all for joining. I'm pretty impressed with where we got to in an hour. It doesn't seem like much, but actually what we've done there is we've taken an Excel sheet and we've got the ability now to expand that reference wherever we want to go. How to auto create the codes. All right, well, in the last few minutes, let's go through the complexity of that one. We might as well in the last 2 minutes and see if I can get it in the last 2 minutes. So when I create new project code, so the way that this needs to work really is in the background, the way this is going to have to work, if I just put a label in here so we can see it. Now we have an ability, so what we've got here in the master is we've got line items. They're technically ID'd, so I can utilize the ID of this. Every time you create, it creates an ID, but the ID doesn't exist until you create. So in 60 seconds, can I showcase how I would do that? Now, what I would need to do is I would need to do a count on project management, the master. Let's just do dot title because that exists somewhere. And with that, I need to do a count rows. Oh, go away. Count rows on that dot title. That's going to bring me back a number. Because it's gone in and I've got 2. What that means with that is I'm then going to have to write an if statement to say if that is less than, which way does it go? Is it less than 10? Then I need it to be 0, 0, and the output, I believe, +1. I need that to be, if that +1 is less than 10, then it's going to be 0, 0, count rows +1. Otherwise, it's going to be an if, and I like to nest my ifs. So I'll just take all of that, and I'm then going to go, and if that is less than 100, but greater, and that +1 is greater than, it's definitely a more efficient way to do this. And I get rid of the second 0. Now, the reason it's complex is I added the zeros. And I should have just left it as 1, 2, 3, but it becomes more difficult. So I added the zeros, which then makes it a 0 thingy. Let's just end it there. Believe, take all of that, put that into code, and that becomes the default. So I said it was complex, and I mean, I did do it in 60 seconds. So that now, every time I go in and I do my code, what that's going to do now is it's going to count. And as soon as it gets to 9, what I need it to do is I need it to be 0, 1, 0. And then as soon as it gets to 90, I need it to be 100, 101, 102, 103. So that's how that needs to work. So essentially the reason for that, the complexity, is you just need to add in, because I stupidly put zeros in there. That's where that comes from. Fairly impressed we did actually manage to get that in 60 seconds though. So thank you everyone for joining today. Again, we will make this one available. I will send this out. I'll send the Power Automate out with it, and we'll give you all the links so you can have a play. I'll probably push it a little bit further and then I'll send it to you. And in all honesty, hopefully what you've taken from this is that Excel is rubbish. Well, it's not, that's a lie. Excel is amazing, but Power Apps are even better. So thank you all for joining, and see you on the next one. Next one will be a model driven app, and Alex will be conducting it. And if he wasn't aware, he is now. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your evening.